think we're ready to go.
Everybody ready? Oh, sorry. Forgot I was on. Okay. Calling the Monday, April 18th, 2022 Bethel Board of Education regular meeting to order. It is 7:02 p.m. Ms. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Mansfield?
Here.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Here.
Mr. Elam?
Here.
Mrs. Donahue?
Here.
Mrs. Franz?
Okay. Need to say the Pledge of Allegiance, please, everybody? Sure. That's Ohio. That's where. I know, wrong side. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I know, we switched sides, I'm sorry. Switch sides on the flag. Caught me off guard too. Okay, section 2, additions to the agenda. We've moved several items already to their proper locations. Are there other additions to the agenda, please? Board members? Anyone? Mr. Elam?
No.
No? Mr. Firks, Mrs. Hageman? Okay,
Just what's listed?
alrighty. Hearing of the public regarding agenda items. I did have one submitted by Mrs. Beam. Ready?
There? Okay. Okay, I do have 2 items on the agenda, my concerns tonight. And my concerns are from public records requests pursuant 149.3B, which is where I actually asked for public records requests, and it's on the certified employment of 2022-23 hired Danny Elam. Were there other applicants for this position? Yes, there was 3 others. The qualifications of the other 3, in my opinion, far outweighs Mr. Elam's. Those other 3 candidates with their actual teaching experience was listed in the job posting must have been so overqualified that they chose not to pick them. Mr. Elam is still completing his student teaching. He is not even graduated yet. From one of the interviewers, advantages for hiring: he lives in the community, knows the people, his dad is on the board. Really, that's the best advantages to hiring him. Even one of our own board members had concerns on hiring of Mr. Elam. How will the board be hiring DE, since I presume he won't have his license until May or June? That's a good question, when all other candidates were much more qualified, in my opinion. To me, this seems like putting the cart before the horse. Why? Okay, my other concern on the agenda item that I'd like to address the board on is the approval of the 1-year contract for Stormy Malinsky. She is the high school chemistry teacher here at Bethel and the advisor of the Gay Straight Alliance Club. A little background first on her. 6-year salary records: 2014 VLT Academy, 2015 Hamilton County Math and Science, 2016 Hamilton County Math and Science, 2018 Bethel Local School to present time. Over the past few months, many in the community have asked me how this transgender bathroom policy happened so fast at Bethel. My answer is that it has been in the works for years. How do I know? By attending the board meetings and by requesting public records, pursuant 149.43. In December 2018, board approval for Gay Straight Alliance Club for high school and middle school was given to her as the advisor by that present board. Since then, Ms. Malinsky has been actively recruiting the LGBTQ community here at Bethel. How? By holding meetings, fundraisers, bulletin boards, ordering books, putting out monthly flyers and newsletters. I guess my question would be, Where is the inclusion and non-discrimination at this club for the non-LGBTQ kids? How can it be a gay-straight alliance promoting the breakdowns of stereotypes when all they want to do is shove it in people's faces about how terrible they are if they don't agree with everything of the LGBTQ groups? Nowhere in the information I collected does it provide anything celebrating non-LGBTQ students and their differences. No special holidays for normal kids, but they are still not included in them. They only purchase LGBTQ flags, shirts, posters, stickers, etc. Seems like it all goes against the name of the club on the flyers she made. Examples of flyers that I have printed out. Boys meet boys. We are the ants. Tell me again how a crush should feel. Symptoms of being human. Books to read and ordering for the library. Simon Snow series. September 2021 board meeting, she brought about a dozen LGBTQ students requesting transgender bathroom privileges. Proposal was denied. December 2021, transgender bathroom proposal was made policy. January 2022, policy came into effect, no board vote. February 14th, board meeting, PFLAG and Trans Ohio are coming to fight our trans bathroom rights. The more people in support, the better. These are flyers that she actually put out on her websites to students. Why is she allowed to speak at board meeting when there was made clear that all teachers' staff to not be involved? She may be the GSA advisor, but she clearly is a teacher activist and has a political agenda. This exemplifies why teacher activists such as Stormy should not have her contract renewed. She is not who I and most want molding our children. Our children are not eggs for her to hatch for her liberal agenda. An egg refers to someone who doesn't yet know they are transgender. All freshman class parents should be aware that they can ask for their child to be opted out of her class, and other recommendations can be made possible. Other parents and I sent emails to the administration asking them to keep all of this in mind at her contract renewal. Administrators can make recommendations, renewal or to not renewal. It is clear by tonight's agenda she is up for renewal. I am asking for her not to be renewed and pulled from tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I don't believe we have any other slips for additions to the agenda or for comments on the agenda, correct? Okay. Administrative reports. Mr. Ferks, do you want to lead this?
Yes, first on the agenda this evening are our elementary principals, Mrs. Carrie Jones and Mrs. Cassie Schock, who are here to talk about all the good stuff that's going on at Bethel Elementary School.
Good evening. I hope you all had a wonderful Easter weekend. We had a couple of upcoming events on ours. April 22nd is the midterm for fourth quarter already, and May 6th is Bethel Night at Dragon Stadium at 7 p.m. Those tickets can be purchased online already. The past couple weeks, we had third grade students took a trip to Charleston Falls. This was an educational trip that all of our third graders were able to attend. They learned more about the rock cycle and were engaged in hands-on activities outside at Charleston Falls. They heard stories about how Charleston Falls was created, and it was made up of rocks from millions of years ago. They were able to crack open geodes. They were very excited to show us those when they got back and see all the colors on the inside. They had the opportunity to explore a cave there and see the falls. And they went on a rock hunt to learn more about rocks during their trip. The naturalists that led the trip there with our teachers were very educated on the rock cycle, and the third graders all enjoyed their trip. I think one day was much better weather than the other day, but they all had a good time. The next announcement on there was the Principals Award. Students in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade that earned all A's for third quarter were given a certificate, the Principals Award, and those went home with them after third quarter. So congratulations to those students, and keep up the good work.
Our math club ended their year with the 7th annual math club competition on Saturday, April 2nd. We had 84 first through seventh graders who competed in 5 rounds of strategic and critical thinking games. And we are proud of the sportsmanship and competitiveness that our members showed. And congratulations to Zane Burrell and Nolan Glazier, who earned the maximum amount of points to enter the Hall of Fame. We also celebrated our third quarter students who met their math fact fluency goal. So we went around and visited all of the classrooms. We had 353 students who met their goal, and we celebrated with them choosing a bag of chips of their choice. So they do have a fourth quarter goal that they're working toward. And today we had our kindergarten screening. We actually had 100 students go through the process today, which was wonderful. We have 17 students who are confirmed for our Young Fives program, which we're very excited about, and we have 6 who are still considering the option, so that number could continue to grow.
Are there any questions? All right, thank you all.
Just add a comment that the math competition is like my favorite thing that you guys do all year.
Yeah, good.
Love it. That's awesome.
I would agree with that. I think everybody sometimes focuses on, oh, the growth is a bad thing, but one of the things we've been able to do with the growth is offer opportunities like the math club at the middle school. We just finished our high school musical Cinderella at the middle school. We have a middle school musical now. And at the high school, we have kids in science fair, and we have, I believe, 7 students going to state, which is huge. I'm so excited for the kids, for the opportunities at all the schools. So thank you very much.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of that, personally, I'd like to thank a number of our staff members that were involved with kindergarten screening today, from our kindergarten teachers to, we had student teachers involved, we had student teachers / nurses from Sinclair Community College on staff, or on site helping out. We had a number of support staff that were involved, from social emotional counselors to secretaries to nurses to school psychs. And so it was very cool to see, as a superintendent, everybody kind of worked together, and all the families that came through today at kindergarten screening. It's traditionally earlier than we typically have done it, but with our fluctuating numbers from year to year, myself and the staff feel like it's important to try to get those numbers in front of us as soon as possible, so we have an idea on where we need to go as far as the number of course sections that we'll have to offer in kindergarten. I would fully anticipate that we're probably going to continue to have students and their families come in throughout the summer. We do know that we receive a lot of move-ins over the course of the summer as well, so although that number is at 100 plus right now, this year's kindergarten class is the biggest in the school history at 157, so I would fully anticipate right now with 101, we're probably going to have more kids come in. But to have 17 kids sign up and commit to Young Fives on the first day is tremendous. I would fully anticipate with the additional students that will probably come in over the summer and where they qualify at, we could potentially look at having 2 sections, which I think will have a phenomenal impact on the education that we provide and the services that we can provide to our kids who are sometimes coming to school maybe a little young or maybe with not a lot of preschool experience. So we're looking forward to that too. Secondly on the agenda, Mr. Triplett could not be here this evening, so we're going to have a report read by one of our other principals. So middle school report read by Mrs. Schock.
All right, so for Mr. Triplett, they have spring testing is currently underway, and all students have completed their English language arts testing and will complete their math testing at the end of this month. And 8th grade students will also take a state science test the first week of May. Middle school track, April 18th at Northwestern is at 4:30. April 21st, the Dixie invite is also at 4:30, and April 28th, the Waynesville invite is also at 4:30. The 8th grade farewell dance will take place May 13th for 8th grade students in the middle school gym. And lastly, the Outdoor Adventure Club, 16 Bethel students participated this month. This month, students were able to go on a kite flying adventure, and they had the opportunity to create and fly their own kites with the OAC. So thank you to the Miami County Park Districts for their partnership in educating and providing opportunities to our students.
if any of you folks have questions for Mr. Triplett in regards to his middle school report, just feel free to either email him directly or send them to me, and I'll get them to him. All right, next on the agenda is high school principal, Mr. Barrett Swope.
Well, first of all, the high school musical Cinderella took place this past weekend. It was great to see so many students involved in that. I counted up on the program how many students were involved in the cast, the crew, the ushers, the sound, the lights, the tech crew, all that stuff, and there was probably about 70 students total involved. So it's a great opportunity for a lot of our students to be involved in this school activity. It was a good crowd, at least the night I went. I think, it was sold out. The kids did a great job, students did a great job. The music, the acting, the sound, lights, everything was really well. So those students are to be commended. And Mrs. Wolford, of course, as the director and advisor of that, is to be commended as well. Secondly, we have a mock crash assembly coming up here next week. It's Tuesday, April 26th at noon. This is for all students in the high school. It'll be taking place outside on the athletic field out there. The sheriff's department, the fire department, Care Flight will all be involved in that. So I'm sure the community is going to see helicopters landing, and they'll have ambulances with lights and sirens going. And it sends home the message about the seriousness of distracted driving, whether that's drunk driving or being on your cell phone or whatever the case might be. And this is in conjunction this week. The 26th is Tuesday, and then prom is that Saturday night. So it's to send that message to those students about the seriousness of distracted driving. Like I mentioned, prom will take place on Saturday, April 30th, and it'll take place at the Grand Hall at Liberty Tower there in Dayton. Tickets are only $35, and in talking with some colleagues about their proms, their student tickets are $40, $50, $60. Ours are only $35, and that is due to the fundraising efforts that Mrs. Mindy Gatrell and her prom committee students do every year. That helps keep the cost down for that. So I just wanted to give a shout out and thank you to them. The last thing, many probably are already aware, they saw maybe the social media posts, but Bethel High School was recently awarded and selected by the Ohio Department of Education as a Purple Star school. This designation acknowledges the high school's commitment to serve the needs of military-connected families. And so a lot of people were involved in that, including the board here, approving a resolution that I asked you to approve. There was events that I worked on with Mr. Damon Smith in the athletic department to recognize our military there. The guidance counselors, Mrs. Burrell and Ms. Wiedemann, were involved in attending some professional development and putting together some links to websites that then Mr. Cook was able to put onto the district website. So the application was submitted in December. We just heard back last week that Bethel High School would be designated as that Purple Star recipient. So thank you to all those that made that happen. And on upcoming dates, like I mentioned, the mock crash, we have prom coming up, senior award night on Wednesday, May 18th, and then a little over a month away, we have our high school graduation. Anybody have any questions in regard to anything in my report?
I would just like to say thank you for all your work with the Purple Star schools, and I think you're working on a military veterans. So thank you for all your work there, and I would like to reiterate, I love the musicals here, but I would like to thank everyone, not just the kids who were involved, but I know it took a lot of volunteer hours by parents. We have one here tonight who told me she was head costumer. You want to stand up for a minute, Mrs. Payhow? Did anyone else in the audience work with the musical so you can be recognized too? I think it's a pretty cool honor, so thank you for all your efforts. I know it takes a lot of time and energy, and the kids appreciate it, and as the community does too, so thank you.
Not much more I can add to that. I think that covers it. Okay. Thank you for our administrators and your reports. Appreciate you very much. So important dates of the district. And it was a long list last time I checked. You've got them up here. And it keeps going and going and going. I can't believe it's going to end up with graduation. We're already to that point of the year. It's crazy. So we've already surpassed the musical, and we can go on to past teacher comp, Educational Progress Day, Contemporary Arts Greeting. We passed all of those. So prom coming up, crazy that that's already here with April 30th. That we're planning for that already. Thespian induction ceremony is coming up, which is exciting for a lot of our, speaking of the musical students, that'll be coming on up here in May 4th, sorry. And we have solo and ensemble competitions coming soon. And then our facilities and Board of Education meetings coming up on May 9th. And then we'll just stop there because I'm not prepared to think about those dates yet past that. Can't believe it's the end of the year already. Anyone have any dates that we're missing and that you're aware of that we overlooked? Times are correct, everybody knows, as far as we know. Okay. Excellent. Okay, that brings us to Mrs. Hageman's time for the treasurer's items requesting board action.
Okay, so item A are the 4 board policies that we discussed at the work session. And I did attach the policies for everybody's review. Items that are being removed in red and items that are being added in green. So I need your approval on those 4 policies. And then first policy read on policy 0165.1. This is a change and an add to the agenda. We just had an incomplete sentence, and that was on letter A. So the green is the addition to complete the sentence. But this is the first reading. Then we need your approval for the board minutes from March 1st, which was the work session, and the board minutes from March 14th. Approval of the bills that were paid in March, and this is, of course, the check register. All 35 pages for all the bills, and including payroll that was run in the month of March. Then need your approval of the monthly financial report. And as we started doing shortly after I got here, I've separated that cash summary report for your review so that you can see, you don't have to scroll through 42 pages. I know that was often a little crazy. That shows all the cash in each available fund for you. We're pretty much running where we need to be. There is very little variances that exist from our forecast to our actuals at this point. Now, we still have 2-3 more months to go, but we're pretty much running where we need to be, and I was pretty surprised by that. Our target was 80 set. Let's go down a little bit here. I'm going to try and do this. Was hoping that we would collect 87.03% of our overall revenue, and we collected 87.35%, which is always good to collect more. So that's a good thing. And then as we move through to the expenses, I expected us to be spending about 76.89 of our overall budget, and we're actually a little beneath that at 76.73. So right where we need to be, so no surprises. So as a treasurer, I don't really like surprises. Boy, that is really small. Need your approval on the following donations, which is $487.50 from the athletic boosters to the National Honor Society, $3,007.16 from the Bethel music boosters to the high school music program for the curtains. We also got an anonymous donation of $12 for the curtains at the music program. Then letter H is approval of funds. We had 3 new accounts set up, 0199205 Tip Foundation for decodable books for $2,440.45. 0199206 from the Tip Foundation for Mystery Science subscriptions for $2,398. And then 0199923 Tip Foundation for the Disney trip of $1663.87. 019 are just local grant accounts. So their pass-through grants. So just need your approval for that. And then the amended official certificate of estimated resource and appropriation recap. So I need your approval on the changes to our revenues and the changes to our budgets for the month of March. Let's see. Uh-oh. Okay. We did have one certificate of availability, which just pretty much means that we had a bill come in before a purchase order was issued, reviewed, approved, and issued. So the invoice is dated prior to the purchase order, and it's $156,000, which exceeds my authority. So I need the board to approve that for special education services to Miami County ESC. Then, as we discussed earlier, feels like last month, but it was earlier this month, need the board to approve the scholarships outlined here. Let's see. The Flick Scholarship for $300, the Bethel Women's Community Club for $250, Bethel Grange Scholarship for $250, and Brent Lindenning Scholarship for $500, and the Holston Scholarship for $250. Interest really is not doing us a whole lot of good, but I'm glad that we were able to do something and offer some scholarships here. Approval of transfer purchase. We're going to move the purchase of cafeteria funds out of the 070 fund and into the 006 fund because food service has some surplus monies that we need to spend, and that will give us some additional funds that are needed for the K through 5 building as well. So that's all I have. So if anyone has any questions?
Okay. Well, we can cover those in just a second. So is there a motion to place the items from the treasurer's report on the consent calendar?
I'll move.
Thank you, Mrs. Sebastian. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Donahue for the second. Okay. And is there discussion?
I had discussion on, let's see here, item 6B, policy 0165.1. I just wanted to get some clarification on the changes. So the way that I have, the copy that I have, it says it shall be the responsibility of the superintendent in cooperation with the board president. And then the new addition here in the green, is that to prepare an agenda of the items of business to come before the board at each regular meeting? And then I see in red that's crossed out and one other board member selected on a rotating basis. So my question is, the part that is in red with the line, is that being removed?
Correct, yes. It seems like this was, and if that's my error, it was tweaked and all that was on there was it shall be the responsibility of the superintendent in cooperation with the board president and one other board member selected on a rotating basis, and it stopped. And it didn't outline what the responsibility was. So I spoke to Neola, and we pulled the canned version or the prepared version of the policy. So if the board would like to make a change, that's fine. This is just a first reading, and that's why we go through that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I think I like the idea of keeping the rotating board member on there in addition to the superintendent and board president, just for transparency and to have more involvement in the communication.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we've really been practicing that, but it might be something we could have a discussion on, and I'd like to keep that in there.
Yeah, I think it's something that's changed like for a very long time. I think even long before I was president, I can assure you, I think that it used to be set that, I don't know, Laura, you'd have to help me with memory, and Danny too, because I think it used to be that it was president and one member kind of statically did the agenda for a long time. It was just sort of a set two that always did it. It didn't rotate at all. And then that kind of fell away, and it was maybe just superintendent and president for a while. And then when I came on, that was sort of how it was, and it just continued that way. And I have no preference whatsoever. I truly do not care if we rotate members, have set members, have just present. I truly don't care. I have no ego in this, and I don't have any preference.
I like the idea of having that, an option for somebody, another board member to participate
Sure.
as well.
And I can see absolutely why that makes sense. 100% see why. Lori and Danny, do I have the history there right, though? Am I remembering that right?
I think at one time there were two, but as we know, the more people we involve in meetings, the harder it is to get them together.
And I think it was done as a time, as Danny suggested, a time and a availability to get things moving with the building project. There's a lot of meetings. So I also have no preference, but I do think we need to be very conscious of Mr. Ferks's time as we do the agendas, so we're not taking 3 hours. Would that be correct, Mr. Ferks?
Well,
Yeah.
this would be the superintendent, the board president, and then one other board member involvement, right? So that's not a quorum for discussion on the board.
Yeah, it's certainly
agenda.
not a quorum. That's not
Right.
an issue at all.
Right.
No, that's not the issue. I think it's just a time scheduling on the calendar issue more than anything else. So,
I like the idea of the rotating member because some, especially new, gives you the opportunity to learn. And it's not, the intent is not to delay things or draw them out. It's just to.
okay. So, do we just make it rotating member then? Is that what everyone wants to do? Is that the majority feeling, or
Yeah, just add that
Yeah.
red.
put
text
unread the
back in.
red?
Okay.
Is that what we're doing?
I can do
Okay.
that.
Seems to be the consensus for the first read. And it's a first read, so
Mhm.
does that mean we need to pull this off of the vote as well? Because we can't vote on if it's a first read.
It's just a first reading, so we're not voting on that.
Oh, but
Yeah.
we're voting on the rest of the stuff on the
Yeah.
consent calendar.
Yeah.
So theoretically, we have to move this off, and it won't get voted on, and it won't be,
Right.
we're just pulling it off the consent calendar, and we will
Mhm.
not vote on it then later. Okay. Okay, any other discussion we're just placing things on the consent calendar at this moment. Any other discussion at the moment?
I just would like to thank the organizations that have donated money, particularly Music Boosters donating the curtains. That's a lot of sausage to sell at the sausage booth, so thank you for all those parents and kids who have volunteered. Mr. Elam, I know you've spent time up there the last several summers, so thank you.
Okay, can we call the roll on the motion placing items on the consent calendar with the exception of item, what was that, B? It's on the
Yeah.
other page. With the exception of item B.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam? Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes. Okay, now we need a motion to adopt the consent calendar with items from the treasurer's report, except item B.
I'll move.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Is there a second?
I could second that.
Mrs. Franz? Any discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes?
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Okay, both motions passed with 5-0 vote. Thank you. Treasurer discussion, Mrs. Hageman.
At the work session, we talked briefly, and I just wanted to revisit that a little bit, about moving our investments over to Fifth Third Securities from our current investment firm, which is doing a great job, but they have some fees that are, in my opinion, a little high. And so moving them to this new provider, Fifth Third Securities, would save us approximately $19,000 a year. And most of this money is, of course, the building project money, so I would like to save those fees and get as much money as we can in interest and yield so that we can eliminate the fees. So if everyone's okay with that, I'm ready to send the paperwork off and make that change this month. So unless anyone has any concerns, they want to speak now or forever hold your peace kind of thing. And then 5-year forecasting. Currently, we are using, I say you guys, but we are using Frontline, which used to be Forecast 5, which used to be something else, and that cost has gone up considerably. It's about $9,500 to renew. It has a lot of bells and whistles. It's a great software. But I looked around to see if I could find something that was less expensive, and I did find 2 other 5-year forecasting software providers, and one was for $6,500 a year, but they charged a $1,250 setup fee. And the other was for first year $3,475, and second year would be $6,950. So the first year saving us a little over $6,000. It does not have all the bells and whistles, but I've been doing this a while, so I think I can live without the bells and whistles. But I would like to make that change and save the district approximately $6,000 a year on software cost for the 5-year. And that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you, Tina, for saving the district $25,000. That's certainly appreciated. I did have one other question, and maybe I should have added this to the agenda. Did you have an update on the impact aid process?
We were selected for, I submitted all the applications, thanks to Della and all the parents that participated, and the secretaries that helped get it out. So we did qualify, and then we were selected for review, which means I had to jump through some more hoops. So we went ahead and I did all that. I'm still waiting to hear what the amount is going to be. I mean, they say we qualify, but they haven't given me a dollar amount. So it could be $1,200, it could be $12,000 at this point, I don't know. So once we hear something, I will definitely update the board.
Do you know when their deadlines are, or when you might hear back?
They just asked for all the supporting documentation to be completed by March 31st. I would assume, but it's an assumption at this point, that we would hear something before July 1, August 1, but I'm not sure. If they have questions about what we've provided them in the documentations, we may have to go through a few more hoops. But I'd like to know, if I'm jumping through these hoops, how much I'm jumping around for, but we haven't heard yet. So hopefully we will hear soon.
Well, and again, I'd just like to say thank you for all of your efforts. I mean, all this stuff, all this process that Tina has gone through for the securities, for the forecasting software, for impact aid, takes a lot of time, and because of her experience. I mean, I told her back 6 months ago, whatever forecasting software she wanted, purchase it, because she's got the knowledge to use any software. So she's spent a lot of her personal time and energy doing this, so I'd just like to thank her for that.
That's all I have.
So, Ms. Hageman, do you need anything from us for the Fifth Third Securities or anything else, or you're just good to go with what you want to choose?
I'm good to go, I'm good to go. I mean, they have to sign off on our policy. They have to be, and they're ready to do that. And so, yeah, I can send off the paperwork and get the money moved over as quickly as possible.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Anything from other board members on treasurer's discussion? Okay. All righty, moving on to superintendent's items requesting board action. Mr. Ferks?
Good evening. On the agenda for approval this evening, under item number 8, letter A, is approval of certified substitutes. This is one that frequently shows up on our agendas. Each time a substitute teacher is either added or removed from the Miami County ESC's approved substitute list, each district in the county has to go through an approval of that substitute teacher list. And so in a 12-month year, you might see this on the schedule. It seems like 8 or 9 times, 10 times, maybe sometimes every month, just depends. But we are at a shortage of substitutes, so they have recently changed some laws. It used to be you had to have a bachelor's degree substitute. It's now just a high school diploma. So if anybody out there is looking to want to make a difference for the district and also help out students, we'd gladly take you as a substitute teacher. Just feel free to contact Bethel Local Schools and we'll get you set up with the ESE for the requirements to become a substitute teacher. And that's not just substitute teachers, that's substitute bus drivers, van drivers, aides, all kinds of good stuff. Letter B is approval of new certified employees for the 22-23 school year. We have 4 individuals that are on that are underneath letter B. 2 of them fall underneath the high school. I will have Mr. Swope say a few words about each, and then I will say a few words about 2 of our middle school candidates.
Zach DeLoma is being asked to be approved tonight to fill a new position here in the high school with the growth. We have not added any new high school teachers in the time that I've been here, and we're getting to the point where we need to do that. So this is a new position. Mr. DeLoma comes to us with a master's degree in education, as well as a bachelor's degree in education. He has experience. He currently is teaching this year up at Bradford. He lives in the district, has I believe one child who will be attending maybe next year or the year after. We're excited about having him. And then Mike Cantrell is on the agenda for tonight. He is was interviewed for the computer tech teaching position. He has the correct endorsement, which is hard to find in that area. There's not very many teachers that have that endorsement. He also comes to us with experience. He currently is up at Mechanicsburg. He also is involved in an advisor for the Business Professionals of America group that they have at the high school there, and he's also a coach. So we're excited to have him, who's qualified and has taught these classes before, be able to come in and help our high school students in computer tech classes for next year.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Swope. A couple of other individuals that are on the agenda that will fall underneath the middle school category. First one would be Marcia Kerr, who will be serving as a middle school English language arts teacher. She comes to us at step 4 on our salary schedule, has an associate's degree in criminal justice and a Bachelor of Arts degree in humanities and a Master of Arts degree in education, and brings with her roughly 4 years of teaching experience in the classroom level at the middle school building level. The second one is Sarah Spreckels. This is another position that's being added due to our higher numbers in the elementary school trickling up to the middle school level. It's an additional special education teacher as an intervention specialist. Mrs. Spreckels will come to us with a bachelor's degree at step 0. She is also currently completing her student teaching at Warner Middle School in Xenia, Ohio. She's currently working in a language arts and social studies classroom. Previous experiences from Greene County Career Center in 11th and 12th grade math, and also Fairborn Intermediate School, 5th grade math, and will be graduating in May with a Bachelor of Arts in Early Childhood Education and an intervention specialist degree from Cedarville University. Letter C, approval of new classified employees. A couple of classified employees on here are Noah Newman, who will be a replacement as a third shift custodian. He comes to us with a year's worth of experience as a substitute custodian at Vandalia City Schools, and will be joining us at step 2, effective, already started April 11th, 2022. And then Rebecca Shuck, who will come to us as a kindergarten aide at step 4, at $12.71 an hour. 2018 to the present, she has worked at Little Angels Daycare in Brookville, Ohio as a teacher assistant and also lead teacher. And I did check, that is correct, the 22-23 school year, so she'll be starting effective immediately as well. That was a question from our work session. Also on the agenda this evening for consideration and approval is the approval of 1-year limited contracts for our certified staff. So congratulations to all of those staff members who are on the agenda this evening and the work they've done in the classroom, the impact and the difference they've made for not only our district but also our students. Letter E is approval of summer employment. This is one that I know previous boards and myself have been very happy with, was being able to add several years ago staff members to serve as summer employees. We were able 3 years ago to bring custodial services in-house and go away from our third-party outside contract, which not only saved the district a significant amount of money in salary and insurance and benefits, but kind of brought us some consistency as far as who's working in the building day in and day out, year after year. And so we've also opened it up over the summer, and with the work we've done with the deep cleaning of classrooms and locker rooms and restrooms, gymnasiums, buses, the cafeteria, et cetera, allowing some of our summer staff to come on board, earn a decent amount as far as a $12 an hour rate and work in the summer. So we've had a number of staff members the last 3 years. This year we have 7 staff members that are going to be on the agenda to be considered for summer employment. Also on the agenda this evening for approval, I'd like to congratulate Allison Sherrick, Anna Sampson, and Heather Schneider, a 5th grade, and 2nd grade teacher who have been here for a number of years and met all criteria as part of our negotiated agreement, and their efforts in the classroom to be considered for continuing contracts, which is a great thing to receive as a classroom teacher. And then also on the agenda this evening for approval would be the 3-year contract for Special Education Director Tony Cochran. Tony is finishing up his 3rd year in the district and has made great strides as far as improving communications between the district and families, and the work he's done not only for our staff but also with our students as well. And then letter H, approval of supplemental positions, fall, winter sports, and non-sport supplementals. So thank you to all these folks who have stepped up to the plate. Many of these individuals have been on here numerous times, and the work that they have done to provide opportunities for our students here at Bethel, from soccer coaches, golf, volleyball, cross country, non-sport supplementals with advisors and music programs and drama advisor and student councils and yearbook and Muse Machine and Science Fair and Power of the Pen. And as you can see, the list goes on and on. The folks that go above and beyond and do more for our kids. And so you can see we've been able to fill a number of them, and we're still looking for several positions that as we fill those, we'll continue to add and have them on the agenda. So it's been very important for us as a district to get these folks on here early so that as soon as their activities start in the summer, they've been hired, and it allows them to be board approved, because all supplemental contracts are 1 year in length and automatically non-renewed at the end of each year. So it allows these folks, as soon as summer activities start up, especially with your athletics in June, that they've been board approved to begin doing strength and conditioning and workouts and all those kind of things. Letter I, approval of certified resignation. Regret to inform the school board and the community and staff that we have received a resignation from high school art teacher Marie Lindsay. Mrs. Lindsay has experienced a number of health issues over the last several years and has unfortunately missed a significant amount of time. We've received a message from her a few days ago that because of her health issues, she no longer feels like she's going to be able to travel up here from Hamilton to continue. So we unfortunately have her resignation on the agenda for approval, and we're working to fill that position for the rest of the year with a substitute teacher, and then we'll go through the posting and the interview process as we normally do. Letter J actually piggybacks off of, excuse me for a second, letter C. So we are approving the resignation of third shift custodian Zach Hewson, and then you've approved the hiring of third shift custodian Noah Newman, who will replace Zach. Zach recently informed us that him and his family will be moving back to his home state of Indiana, and he is no longer able to continue to work for us as a third shift custodian. So thanks to the excellent work that Zach's done in the time that he was here, and we wish him and his family the best as they relocate back home. And then finally, letter K is approval of leave of absence. We have several teachers, elementary music teacher Megan Rust and high school government teacher Chelsea Porto, who will have upcoming leave of absences approved for maternity leave. So we wish both of those ladies best wishes with their upcoming leaves.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, motion to place items from the superintendent's report on the consent calendar.
I'll move.
Thank you, Mrs. Sebastian. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Is there discussion? Okay, hearing none. Can you call the vote or the roll for the motion on the consent calendar, please?
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes?
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Okay, 5-0 for that vote. Is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar with items from the superintendent's report?
I'll motion.
Is that Mrs. Franz?
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Franz, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Is there discussion? Okay, hearing none. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Okay, that also carries 5-0. Thank you, everyone. Now, superintendent's items for discussion. No, one more superintendent's item, 9A, Mr. Ferks.
Correct.
Sorry.
On the agenda this evening is the approval of new certified employees for the 22-23 school year. Mr. Danny Elam for high school math. I'll allow Mr. Swope to say a few words about Mr. Elam as well.
Mr. Elam has finished up his student teaching at Carlisle. He will be awarded his bachelor's in education from Grand Canyon University here soon. He already has a bachelor's degree in business, and he has worked a number of years in the business industry. He would be coming into a new position. Once again, because of the growth, we are in need of another math teacher. Courses he'd be teaching would be Algebra 1 and Financial Literacy. The Financial Literacy course is newly mandated by the Ohio Department of Education. It says that every student, beginning with next year's freshman, have to have a standalone course, which means it can't be wrapped up into another course. Has to take a standalone course in financial literacy. So going over basic personal finances and basic business concepts and ideas are the courses, in addition to Algebra 1, that Mr. Elam will be teaching you in the high school. Thank you.
Do you have anything further, Mr. Burks?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion for Danny Elam III?
I'll move.
Thank you, Mrs. Sebastian. Is there a second? There is no consent for this one. It's a standalone item, so it's just a vote. Oh, my gosh, that's right. Discussion first because it's not a motion to put on consent. My bad. Apologies. Discussion. I'm in a routine here right now. I apologize 100%. I would have had discussion after I got motions. I'm sorry. We can do that too. Either way.
Sorry.
We'll pause, discuss, come back. It's fine.
I just wanted to make sure.
First and a second, and then
First, second, discuss, right?
Mhm.
So I was right. I'm not crazy. I just think I'm crazy. We can have a first and a second and then discuss. Anyone care to make a second?
Okay, I'll make a second.
Mrs. Donahue with the second. I got myself all rattled. Discussion, please. There we go.
I just had a few clarifying questions. So it's my understanding, and I want to make sure I have this correct, that there was a team of individuals that did the interviewing of the 4 candidates that was narrowed down to, I think it started with maybe 13, don't quote me on that, got down to 4. And then of the 4, Mr. Firks and Principal Swope, and maybe 2 or 3 other teachers were involved in the interviewing process. Is that correct?
No, it was Mr. Swope and teachers. I was not involved.
Oh, you were not involved? Okay.
Nope.
Was there a final decision maker on that, or was it just a collaboration of the? Okay. And I think, yeah,
Just a second. So, because people can't hear Mr. Swope, he said it was a collaboration amongst the teachers and the team.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. What
Just
did I
because
say?
it doesn't have a mic.
Oh, okay.
I'm just repeating what he said because people
Okay.
can't hear it. Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, that was just, I wanted to know who was involved in that process and decision-making. And I think that's really the only question I had at this time.
Further discussion?
I just have one question, Mr. Swope. Was it the applied algebra is the new course offered by the, not offered, recommended by the state? No, it's algebra, another.
Financial literacy course is being mandated by the state.
Right. And there wasn't there another algebra class?
Applied algebra,
Okay,
that is not being taught by.
okay. Okay, originally I was thinking this position would cover both, but that's why I'm asking. So it will pick up Algebra 1 and the financial literacy. Okay, thank you.
But he could be shifted around to whatever needs we have moving forward.
The schedule is cement, but the cement isn't dry next year. So there could be some changes, but as of right now, tonight, those are the 2 courses.
Thank you.
So just to pick up what Mr. Swope said is that, while it's not 100% guaranteed, the plan is for him to teach financial literacy and Algebra 1, but primarily financial literacy is the primary focus. Is that true?
Half the day.
Half day, and then the other half algebra? Okay, great. And then, Mr. First, can you speak to the financial literacy requirement from the state, just briefly?
Yes, in the past, financial literacy was partially a requirement, and I say that because it wasn't a standalone course. From experience, my last several years, I taught American government and civics. The district was able to say that I taught financial literacy through Dave Ramsey's financial piece that I offered every Friday in class. That's what a lot of districts did, to be upfront and honest. I wasn't an economy major, or economics major, but we were able to fit that into that schedule that way, and most districts did it that way. The state of Ohio has realized that being able to manage budgets and your credit card and checkbooks and understanding expenses versus revenues are a very, very important concept to have as a student as you graduate high school and enter the life beyond school. And so they've now made it a standalone course offering that every school district in Ohio has to offer, and every kid has to have some sort of I don't know what the credit is it half a credit or half a credit before they graduate? So most districts are incorporating this into some sort of coursework. In our case, I think it makes sense because of the background that he has in the business sector. Having worked with his business administration degree for a number of years before going back and getting an education degree, that he offers a unique skill set that a lot of first-year teachers wouldn't have, including myself. So,
Great, thank you.
you're welcome.
Further
And I'm
discussion?
sorry, I had a couple, just as we were.
Yeah.
So it is pending graduation, though, in May, correct?
Yes.
The
So you
employment.
have 2 of them. You have Mr. Elam and Mrs. Spreckels, who are both
Okay.
currently student teaching, and it's pending graduation in May. Like every other applicant, it also pending successful passage of BCI, FBI background checks, and any other pre-employment screenings that we require for employment.
Okay.
Yep.
And how many student teaching hours does Mr. Elam currently have?
I would have no
Is that-
idea.
Something that, okay. Carlisle, is that, okay.
Yeah, I really wouldn't remember what my degree program required of me either. I honestly don't remember, but it's a significant number of hours. I mean, I did half days and whole days, a mixture depending on what the semester was, and it just depends by the school. But there's a set number for the state's going to require for the school itself to be certified to offer a degree. So it's a standard thing. I just don't remember how many hours it is.
Okay.
I'd just like to thank all the teachers involved, not just with Mr. Elam, but with all the other teachers. I can't ever remember a year we've had staff hired this early, and that's a credit to Mr. Firks and the principals getting it done. I think the quality of our candidates is better the earlier we do it rather than waiting till June or July, and I'm seeing the BEA nod. So I just appreciate all their efforts, because it's not a trivial process to go through all the resumes and then bring 4 candidates in. And my understanding was in many cases they're offered a lesson to teach to the final 2 candidates. So it's a long process to even get to that point. So thank you to the staff, teachers, principals, administrators who are involved in that process.
And I believe I mentioned in the work session too how unusual it is as a math teacher myself. None of my peers had a business degree. In addition to a math teaching degree. It's very uncommon. So for us to be able to have that for someone who's going to teach financial literacy is a real boon, I would think, for our students, as well as industry experience is always great to bring a teacher with having worked in the world and then come into the classroom. I think it's excellent for our students to be able to tap into that. So that's just my 2 cents. Is there further discussion or comments? No? Ms. Hageman, will you call the vote?
Mr. Elam?
Well, Mr. Elam has stepped away because he didn't feel it was appropriate to be a part of it, so it would be an abstain, I assume.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes with a 4 yes, 1 abstention. Okay, superintendent's item for discussion?
No, ma'am.
Okay, hearing of the BEA president.
All right. Couple things here. I want to congratulate everyone that has just been approved. Welcome to the Hive. It's a fun place. Also want to congratulate those 3 teachers who are receiving their continuing contract, Mrs. Sherrick, Ms. Sampson, and Mrs. Schneider. Congrats. We have 77 Bethel Education Association members, and we are growing every year, so 77, that's awesome. We recently had elections for the 2023-2024, so the next 2 years. Our secretary is Mr. Casey Dellinger. Our treasurer is Ms. Laura Wolford. Our vice president is Mrs. Erin Henry, and our president is Mrs. Tracy Brewer. Also, the BEA has a Bethel Education Association scholarship that we give every year. The BEA has unanimously voted to change the name of that scholarship to the Jody Hockett Spears Memorial Scholarship. We will be giving 2 scholarships to seniors at the Senior Awards Night. Thank you.
That's beautiful, Mrs. Brewer. Thank you. And congratulations to the new officers. New-ish officers. Congratulations. Okay, board items. Oh, sorry.
Mrs. Mansfield, before we go, Mr. Elam was not present, but I would like him to speak publicly his vote on the item since he was not in the room for Mr. Danny Elam III.
Abstain.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that too. Okay, board items for discussion. We have item A. So, at our work session, mistakes were made on my part. I'll take the blame for this, for sure. I had read in our policies, under review of policy, I did not see any indication that we could not waive a second reading, and that's because it appears under a different board item under legislation. So under legislation is where it says that when you want to waive a second reading, you can only do it in emergency situations. So I overlooked and missed that part entirely. That was my fault, my entirely fault. So therefore, I am asking my peers to rescind the 2 things that we did, which is totally okay to do. We have to vote to do that, though. So we're going to rescind 2 items that we did, which one was to waive the second reading, And the other one was to actually go ahead and approve a policy change because it hasn't had its 2 readings. So if we could do that, that would be much appreciated to clarify some technical things that we should not have done. So item A is rescinding resolution, which is 22-122. It's our 122nd thing we did this year already. Is that what you're telling me? Oh my gosh. From the April 5th, 2022 work session. It was for board policy 2431, where we waived the second reading. So we would need a motion and a second. So I'm going to make the motion because it was my driven thing.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Sebastian. And so we're rescinding the fact that we waived the second reading. So first by me, second by Mrs. Sebastian. Can you call the vote, please?
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Okay, so that passes 5-0. And again, apologies to everyone for that. Item B, this is going to be where we actually then invoked that theory of the technical change, which is not a thing apparently. We've now discovered it's okay in Robert's Rules of Order and Parliamentary Procedure. It's just not okay in our own policies. So this is doing the same thing again. So I move to rescind 2022-123 resolution from the April 5th work session, which was just going from GPA of 2.0 to 1.67 in that policy. No bueno to have done that, my bad, and I will not do that again, I promise, clearly. So I move to rescind that resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Who was that? That's Mrs. Donahue. Thank you very much, Natalie. So first by me, second by Natalie. Can you call that vote, please?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes. So that passes 5-0. So those 2 things are now no longer a thing. We're not done. So now we can look at, this is our second reading now, because the first reading would have been from the work session. This is that athletics, interscholastic athletics policy 2431, what we were looking at the work session as a first reading. The only change we are making to bring it in alignment with what our athletics department is doing, a C- for our grading scale is now a 1.67. Our board policy said that to stay in there, we had to maintain a 2.0, but our grading scale says a C- is a 1.67. So we're trying to make those things the same thing, that if you have a C-, you can play. So we have to put those 2 things together and make them the same thing. That's what this policy change does. Makes them the same. It's still a C-. Correct? Am I saying that right, Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes, we changed our grade point average policy 2 or 3 years ago, and
Yep.
instead of just being 4 for an A-, 3 for a B-, we made it a little more discreet. So this is purely procedural. We're not doing anything crazy. It's just to make it consistent with the current GPA scale. I'll make a motion that we adopt this policy.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sebastian,
I'll
for the
second.
motion. Mr. Elam has seconded. Is there discussion? Is everyone clear on what we're doing and what happened and everything? I know we've just done a lot of stuff, so I just want to make sure everybody's clear. We were clear before. We're still clear. I think everybody understands. Okay. All right. When you're ready, Ms. Hageman.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Okay, so that policy change for 2431 has passed on its second reading. Thank you. 5-0. Okay. Item D, discussion update on the board resolution on the annexation. So we had a special meeting on the 8th of April. I was trying to think based on musical dates because I know I was selling tickets that night, where the board gathered to pass a board resolution on the annexation, which is up here. It was similar to the annexation we passed last fall when it was only 233 acres, but now it went up to 260.369 acres. Almost identical wording. We updated the number of homes and we updated the number of vehicles, and included that this would get sent to the Ohio Department of Transportation, and I think that's the only changes we really made to support the township's opposition to that annexation. We passed that. Obviously, since then, the county commissioners, I think most of you have probably heard that they voted to deny the petition on that 260 acres. We just wanted to be clear and let the community know and attach this also to our agenda that Mr. Kiefler from Carriage Trails did send the board a memo noting items that I don't know if he can really call these disputes to our resolution, but he was just asking, you know, with regard to roadways, that maybe ODOT requirements were involved and things like that, and stating that, you know, Carriage Trails provides money to the district, and that it kind of takes years to plan, and he believes the school has time to plan for that. So we just thought it was only fair that if we had this information and this letter from the commission, from Mr. Kiefler, that the community should be able to see that and read that as well. So any other discussion or conversation related to that resolution or commissioner's actions or the letter from Mr. Kiefler? No. Okay. I mean, he did at the work session also. Mrs. Reese, I believe, had said that she thought it would be great if the Carriage Trails, if the new development ever were to go through, if they would provide land to the school. Should we decide we put a school there? And he did agree that he would do that. So that's worth noting as well. Should it ever come to it, right now it's clearly been denied by the commissioners, so it's a no-go at this point anyway, not even something to discuss. So that's all I have. Anyone else? Okay. Moving on to item E, discussion of possible Q&A session, where this has been obviously ongoing for some time. So at the February meeting, I had proposed that we try and have a Q&A session where we could bring in some unbiased third parties that might be able to talk about, with our transgender restrooms, transgender student using restrooms in our district, how a case might roll through the courts. If it were to be one, we could bring in possibly, we talked about Ohio Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, possibly Ohio Attorney General's office representatives, anyone who might not be maybe our attorneys or other attorneys. It would just be attorneys back and forth, but maybe just to discuss what would be the perils and pitfalls of a case should it go through, just unbiased folks that we could all ask questions to and say, how does this work? How would it go? What would a case be like? So we had some discussion on that, and then it kind of said maybe that would be a good idea. Mr. Elam contacted a number of people, maybe 15, 20 people, Mr. Elam, that you've tried to reach out to or more?
More like 10.
Okay. Number of people, hasn't really gotten any traction with these unbiased third parties. If he reaches out to them, they either say, well, we would represent someone who is bringing a case against you and we'd be happy to talk to them, but we don't really want to come sit on your panel. I've talked to some folks as well. I know that Mrs. Franz has reached out some parties that are interested in being a part of the conversation. The trick is getting the unbiased people that aren't maybe just our attorneys or just someone else's attorneys. It's the unbiased component that I'm kind of stuck on. I know. I don't think everybody else is quite as hung up on that as I am, but that's been our hinge point. So in March, we did agree. The board voted and said, yes, we would move forward and try and put together some kind of a Q&A session. Our attorney was not available on the 29th or the 31st of March when we said we would try and put that together. So that 29th, 31st date has fallen through. And we discussed it more in our work session, kind of at length, kind of around what the scope would be. Maybe possible dates were not really discussed. We said maybe May. The format, I think, is probably the best word for it. We talked about whether it could be online with questions submitted in advance, or if that would work or not work, if it had to be in person or not. So we've kind of gone round and round and round with this, and now we're back again to discuss it a little bit further. So that's kind of my lead-in summary, and now I throw it to my fellow board members to pick up said discussion. Discuss. Where are we at? Where are we heading? Who has thoughts, ideas, direction beyond that?
I think I'm still at the same place that I was at the work session, with moving forward with a in-person community forum now that our sound issues seem to be worked out, it seems like we could go ahead and move forward with having that at Bethel Hall. And I know I've got at least one state school board member who could attend, and 2 attorneys who could also attend. I mean, provided we'd have to nail down a date in May. I think you had mentioned it'd have to be after testing. We had discussed that. So we're looking towards the end of May. So that is, that's where I'm at with it.
Okay. Additional discussion?
I've talked to several people in the community, and I think there's interest in, instead of being so polarized, maybe reaching some kind of compromise. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm wondering, I guess I have a question because I've listened a lot. Do those of us on the Bethel School Board, do we recognize that transgender students and adults have rights? Because that's a pretty, if we can at least get consensus on that, whether we do or don't, I think that gives us a starting point for where we moving forward. Do transgender students and adults have rights?
I was going to say, you can start.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, they have rights. Equal rights, not any more than any other student at school.
100%? 100%.
Do we think it's possible to form a smaller group of people and maybe discuss some options? I know for those of you who were here at the facilities meeting, we did get a quote back for partitions in the bathrooms to see if there's strategies that we can use to accommodate all of our students.
These might be excellent points that could be brought up at a community forum by parents and community members.
I'm just not sure. I think a smaller group can do things a little bit quicker and maybe reach consensus and then bring it to the community.
I think it's important to invite all the community members and parents who want to attend and give them the opportunity to ask their questions of the attorneys at the state school board, of us if we want to be there. I don't know. I'm assuming that we would be there for a community forum. I don't know if we want to be in a position of answering questions, but I think it's important for us to be there.
Mr. Elam, do you have thoughts?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of that. Jessica, I didn't hear the last part of that.
Of what I said?
Yeah.
Oh, I just said that I thought it was important for the school board members to be there for a community forum. They're able to be there.
And then after that?
Did I say anything else? I think that was it.
Okay. Well, again, we know that we can't find anyone unbiased, and only the only people that we would have at something like this is our lawyers who are already on our payroll. I agree that if some kind of compromise could be found with smaller groups, then I think that would be a good idea. I voted for this community forum last time, but if something could be done with smaller groups, I would like to see that.
I think, again, and I know we covered this in the work session, so it's going to be rehashing a lot of stuff, but for parents, again, and community members that want the opportunity to ask those questions of the individuals responsible, our school board attorneys, for helping to steer the district toward making this decision, I think they should have the opportunity to ask those attorneys how they came to this conclusion.
Are you talking about asking them, like, debating the legalities? Because I'm not sure they're going to be up for that.
I'm asking whatever they want to ask them. That's up to the community. That's up to the parents. It's their right to ask whatever questions they want, because this affects the entire community.
I mean,
I'm not going to sit here and try to guess what, I don't have a crystal ball to see what questions they'd ask, but they do have a
Sure.
right to ask the questions.
Sure. I mean, it's difficult for me to speak for the attorney because he's not here, right? So I can't really say what he's going to be saying, yeah, sure, I'll be a part to that, right? It's really difficult to make decisions for other people. We can only speak for ourselves. So it puts us in a very difficult spot to say, yeah, let's go forward with that. That's going to be a great idea. Let's speak for them. It's really hard to say what our attorneys are going to agree to or what any attorney is going to say that they're a party to. You know, very difficult. I specifically did ask our attorney, would he be okay with defending the FAQ? Because I know for sure people have questions specifically about things on the FAQ. He did say that, yes, he would be fine with that for sure. I did not get the impression when I asked him if he was going to be up for debating beyond that, legalities of, you know, case law and back and forth and that and the other, because you got to know that there's different district courts, there's different all kinds of things that he's, you know, he can't pull that up and study it and be prepared to speak on a dime about that kind of stuff. So I think that would make any attorney uncomfortable. That just makes sense. I've known attorneys my whole life.
I think he had
and
agreed
that's,
to
you know.
come previously, though, is that correct? At least Mr. Poderski had agreed to come up until about a week before.
He agreed to come, but I think he's going to want to limit the scope on some of those things, because if it's going to be about things like case law discussion, he's not probably going to be prepared to discuss that. I think that's fair to say that any attorney would not be prepared
I think he
beyond
probably should be.
what he's already studied.
I think it's a
and-
reasonable expectation that he would be prepared to answer those questions. I said nothing about debate. I said being able to answer questions from the
Sure.
community.
Well, but you've also indicated that you wanted to bring other attorneys, and attorneys love nothing more than to debate the law with each other. So I feel like that alone is going to create a friction point.
Again, I don't think we've ever used the term debate when bringing in our panelists
Sure.
for the community forum. So we've talked about bringing in attorneys that represent both sides of the issue. But as far as them going at it, that's not what I pictured. That's not what we've talked about. We've talked about having them on a town, like a town hall, and having them answer questions pre-selected from the community. And then also, I think we've talked about having a moderator or two taking questions in the audience. So it's definitely something that I believe can be done without chaos, can be done constructively.
Mhm.
So I believe it's more than possible to get this together, to have an online community, or I'm sorry, not an online, an in-person community forum at the end of May.
I agree.
think- Mrs. Donahue, you were about to say?
I was going to say, I think we can do it. I really do. We've heard from the community. We know they have additional questions or maybe want to cement what they think they've heard. And I think we owe that to them. And I really think there's been a lot of time and effort put into this on both sides, the thoughts and strategies. And really, we took this next step, too, to make sure that the meetings could be heard by anybody who's listening online, and I think if it works out well, that we're poised to take the next step and continue to work to set this up and open it to the community. They've been asking, and I think we're almost there. I really think that in some ways that is a compromise by having people from both sides, if you will, that have answers and the community can ask. And if we put together some options for safety, maybe, I don't know if it would be ready in time, but we can definitely share those things. It's an opportunity to communicate, get feedback, and decide where we go next.
I mean, I think we're all very interested in implementation and figuring out that path forward. I think that's absolutely agreed. I don't think anyone has any issue with that whatsoever. So I heard you say some key things, like questions in advance. I think that makes attorneys very comfortable. I think that'll help everyone feel comfortable if they know what questions are expected, to prepare thoughts and remarks and comments. I think that makes everyone feel a lot more comfortable. So that's a plus. I heard you say that. Other thoughts? Other people? Mr. Elam, your thoughts?
Well, probably the next step is to try to find a date.
I mean, I think it's critical that we not commit to a date right now because, again, we can't speak
Correct.
for our attorneys. We
Correct,
can't speak
correct.
For, like, I'm not going to get into that again because that obviously bit us before.
I
So,
didn't mean to infer that, I'm sorry.
yeah. No, I know. I just want to be clear with everyone here that we cannot speak for other people's calendars who are not sitting at this table. That's not okay. So,
Are we interested in creating a smaller group to pursue some of the options we have at this point to try to reach a compromise?
What does that look like to you?
Well, I would think it would be a committee that Mr. Ferks would put together with our input. Our superintendent is responsible for student accommodations. He needs to be involved. I would think each board member would suggest a person. And again, these have to be people willing to compromise. Again, we're trying to reduce polarization. That's my goal in this. Because I know we have people on both extremes. So we want to try to find some middle ground that we can agree on. I would think 2 board members should be on the committee. That's kind of probably a representative from the BEA, if they were comfortable, should be on the committee. That's kind of what I was thinking at this point. I'm open to other ideas. Suggestions?
That's something I'd have to give more thought to. I definitely want more than 2 board members at the meeting. So we would have to probably call an official, I don't know if that would be a special meeting.
That kind of defeats the purpose of a smaller group.
Yeah, I'm just not interested in doing things in the dark. I want to do everything out in the open. So we can do it, but it's got to be a meeting. That's my thoughts.
So I think your committee might be something that could form on the other side of the community Q&A. So how about we do the Q&A session first and then see where we land? Does that sound reasonable? Let's not bite off
What is the Q&A
more than we
session?
can
Are you
chew.
referencing the community forum?
There was never a community forum. It was a question and answer forum. It was never a community forum.
I have always referred to it as a community forum. I don't, so what are you suggesting again? So I'm understanding what you just said, because you said something about a Q&A session moving forward. What does that mean?
Yeah, the Q&A session is what I've always called it since I proposed it in February. So whatever everybody else calls it can call it. That's just what I've always called it. So when I say Q&A session, you say community forum. It's a semantics thing probably, but it's the same thing. So
we
it's
are
where
moving-
questions come to us, we plan to answer them, we have a time when we get together and we answer them. Whether the community's here to listen, that's great, I love that. That's the idea though, is that questions were submitted in advance, which in my mind makes it different than a community forum. Community forum is more like when we have our public comments. People can come and I don't know what you're gonna ask me. You come and you talk to me and you bring commentary. That to me is a community forum. I have absolutely no clue what's coming at me. But at a Q&A session, we're prepared. The attorneys get the questions in advance. Whoever's on the panel has questions in advance. You have a time to prepare. To me, that's a distinction that's important.
Okay, yeah, that is a distinction that's important, because that's not what the community's been asking for. They definitely, along with having those pre-selected questions, which I can agree to, especially so we're not getting overlap. We don't want the attorneys to be getting the same question from multiple people. But there also needs to be a moderator who can go take questions in the audience. So we can have 1 or 2 moderators, depending on the size that we anticipate will be attending. But let me be clear that what I'm hearing from the community is that they want a community forum. We can do the pre-selected, questions, that's fine, but there also needs to be an opportunity for them to be able to speak, to ask their questions in the audience. So it can't all be controlled. It can't all be the pre-selected questions. We can do some of that, but I think we need to have a mix.
Well, if we're doing, are we still doing a 1 or 2 hour time limit?
I think we had talked about not having it go beyond 2 hours. Is that what everyone?
We had talked about making it a 1 hour plus introductions.
Okay.
You and I talked about 1 hour. We talked about 1 hour and plus time for introductions.
Right, we had talked about 1 hour.
I said 1 hour, you said 2 hours.
Right, and I think I said I don't see how it can be done in 1 hour. So not giving the panelists an opportunity to be introduced conservatively, I'm going to say that's going to take 10 minutes at least for each panelist, saying that we have maybe 3 or 4 panelists, and you know, having those selected questions, having time for audience discussion. I see that taking at least 2 hours.
Well, is this something that we want to figure out tonight? I don't know. Well,
Okay, so I think baseline is an hour, and let's see what questions we get. I think you may only get 6 unique questions or
as
question
I said,
areas.
there's only one subject here in this forum, correct? There's only one question, there's only one subject to be discussed.
Yes, but if we are giving...
It's not like a political rally or a political town forum where there might be 10 or 12 issues to discuss. There's only one.
Right. Are we giving our panelists time for introductions? Let's say 10 minutes each to talk about their background.
No. 10 minutes is a very
why?
long
10
time.
minutes each?
Okay, how long?
I said, well, what I said before, 10 minutes to introduce all the people involved.
Oh, 10 minutes for all the introductions.
Correct.
Okay. I still think we're going to be hard pressed to fit that in an hour.
That's
Maybe
not what
an
I
hour
said.
and a half.
I said the introductions and then an hour. That's what,
Okay,
that's
so
what
like
we
an hour and
talked
a half?
about.
Hour and a half?
Okay,
Okay.
for everything.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a little flexibility there, but yeah, we can set the time, try to fit it in an hour and a half, and hopefully that will, again, I'm going to state for the record, I think 2 hours is probably more what we're going to be, needs to be our target for what we're trying to accomplish.
What are you trying to
well,
accomplish? I'm curious, what are we trying to accomplish? And I mean, we have, I believe, another stack tonight. This is the 3rd meeting we've heard from people, and I mean, what are we trying to accomplish?
I'll explain it again about a community forum, which is what the community has been asking for. What that looks like is bringing on 3 to 4 panelists, and hopefully that's a state school board member, at least one of
No,
our
you're
school board
describing the
attorneys.
format of the community
Right.
forum. What are we trying to accomplish? Is that your goal, is to have a community forum?
I think what we're trying to accomplish is to respect the community who's asked to be heard, who's asked to be able to have time to come and pose their questions.
And we do have, for those community members who may not be aware, we do have an online, entry form at this point where you can submit questions, and that would be submitted to the appropriate staff member, whether it be the administration or our attorney. You can start using that now. That could reduce the time of the community forum if people choose to use that online forum. I know there are people who don't want to do that, but I mean, that's an option as well, to keep the time limit
And this online
reduced.
option happens at every board meeting that we hold in the library, that we have held in the library. At the end of each meeting, we ask, have there been any questions submitted via YouTube or via online?
No, I'm talking
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
And again, the entry form that you're talking about, that was posed to the board, that was never voted upon or decided. That was something that was made, I think, a decision by our board president to move forward with communications director. Is that correct?
And it
our
was something
attorney,
that we
Mr.
did when we had the
Poderski.
reopening of schools for COVID, so I just said, why don't we reinstitute that again? It was basically
Well, that was
something we've
recently,
done
though,
before.
correct?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but again,
our
that's
FAQs
something
online.
that
Yeah.
we didn't discuss as a board. That's something that you decided to do without the board voting upon it. And Mr. Podersky is in charge of answering those questions. Is that correct?
I don't know if we've even gotten any questions yet, but it depends on what questions we get, where they go,
Okay.
actually. If it's a school policy or a school administrative guideline kind of a thing, or if it's a legal thing, it depends on what the question is of
Okay.
who answers it.
Can
And
you show people where those facts are, because people may not be aware, or where the submission is? I'm not sure that's been formally announced to the community.
It's never left the website. It's been on there since the reopening plan first came out 2.5 years ago with COVID. It's never left. There's just been more information added to it.
Right, but I think in the past, did we have the ability to submit questions? Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I
Yeah,
learned something new
absolutely.
tonight.
I mean, it
Okay.
was primarily put in place
Okay.
when COVID came about and the state of Ohio shut us down. And then as we were trying to come back into a school setting from online, people had a lot of questions on what social distancing looked like, et cetera, et cetera. We put that on with when Mrs. Mutlu was here as our communications director 2.5 years ago.
Okay,
It's
I
been
just
on
didn't
there.
realize we could input stuff there.
Sure,
I
it-
apologize.
We haven't received questions since kind of COVID restrictions have been lifted. That's primarily what it's been used for.
So when you go to the website, if you go to the menu and just scroll down to FAQ, there's all the various frequently asked questions that we have for all the topics, menus and meal accounts and so on. But at the very top, there is an area where you can click there to submit through a form. If you have something else, if it's about kindergarten registration, if it's about this particular topic, if it's about, I don't know where to find scheduling information, whatever it is, you can submit an FAQ. What is your question? And then it just depends on what it is. It'll answer whatever you want to know. It'll go to whoever's fielding those questions. I don't know if it's our communications director, I assume.
Yeah, communications director, who's actually up there, Jacob,
Yeah.
takes those emails, and then if they're school district related, he'll share with me, but he has the capability or capacity. If it's a building level question, when are high school exams, he gets right with Mr. Swope and get that information. Or if it's lunch account stuff, he'll get with Mrs. Wolski in the food services department. A lot of times we get questions on transportation and bus routes and that kind of stuff, so he'll get with Mrs. Rhodes. More so goes to whoever it's related to department-wise.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. So, back to this. Where'd we leave off? Planning a thing in May, yes?
What was that? I'm sorry.
We're planning this thing in May, right?
Yes.
Okay. And in the meantime, I do encourage everyone to submit questions if you have them through the online thing, because it might give us a basis to start figuring this out. Are we going to use that same thing to get our questions submitted, or are we going to create something new? Because that's something else we'd have to figure out.
I would think this, since it's developed, let's use this.
Okay. And we'd have to do some social media and promote, this is where you put in your questions, and, okay. We'll attach that to the advertising for this session whenever we get a date for it. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Link.
Do other board members have different thoughts?
Okay. All right. Okay. So questions in advance, check. Moderator? Check. I think we all agree on
Yeah,
moderator.
I think so.
Mr. Elam, you had a moderator in mind, is that correct?
Yes, for the previous dates,
Okay, do you
Yes.
believe they're still willing?
probably,
Okay,
if they're available.
okay. And then the length, I think we've all agreed, is about an hour and a half-ish, with including introduction time, and go from there and figure, okay? Date is to be determined, but we're hoping for by the end of May. And we have to look at calendars and attorneys' calendars and so on. It's negotiation season, so it's going to be tough for attorneys, but we'll figure it out, right?
And we are not, I just want to make clear, we do not plan to exceed 2 hours in length, correct?
I believe that's what I had talked about, yeah. That's my
So I
thoughts.
just want that publicly stated, so when we hit 2 hours, if we hit 2 hours, we're done. Okay.
By end of May.
I thought we were talking about an hour and a half.
That is the goal. That is the goal. Mrs. Sebastian's just trying
All
to
right.
put
Oh,
a
I see.
2-hour cap.
I see.
If things go long, there's a grace period. That's what I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Okay. Any other commentary about scope or anything else?
And we are taking audience questions.
I believe that those would be a follow-up, I assume, to the prepared remarks, and we'll see where we go with the questions that we've agreed to in advance, right? We said they're pre-submitted questions, already planned, right? So the attorneys have their planned questions and planned answers. It's the panel, whoever it is, right? We said that was already agreed, that would be a thing. Then there can be follow-up questions after that.
Right.
Yes?
The moderator taking
The
questions.
moderator
Yeah,
taking questions after the planned questions are
right.
done first.
That's correct.
Okay.
And again, depending on the size that we anticipate, we may need a second moderator. So if your moderator doesn't work out too, we'll have to think of someone else, so. And I do have someone in mind,
I'm not sure why we need a second moderator.
depending on the size. One moderator can take one half the room, another moderator can take the other half, so they're not walking around,
I see.
so someone's over here stationed, someone's over here, they would take this
I see.
section, the other moderator would take the other section. I think it would actually go a little faster.
Got it.
Okay. And then I assume guidelines for speaking would be similar to our already existing hearing in the public guidelines.
I would imagine so, yeah.
Okay. Well, we're about to have them here in just a moment. So they're fairly lengthy. Can you click on the guidelines for hearing in the public? They're things like, we'll tweak them a little because it won't be you address only the chairman because it would be able to address the panel. So there will be some tweaks there, but it's things like, well, I mean, here's the list, right? We can go through it. So legitimate interest, clearly people who are here would have that, so we can probably rule that out more or less. You have to register your intention to participate. I think anyone here, we can say, if you're here, you've registered your intention to participate. Recognized by the moderator, we would say. Statement be limited to, we'll have to have a limit. If you're asking a question, I don't think 5 minutes is going to be a thing. If you're going to be asking a question, we would have to say more like a minute to ask your question. Is that reasonable? How long does it take to ask a question? A follow-up question? I don't think you need
I'd say
5
30
minutes.
seconds. I mean, if it gets longer than 30 seconds, probably the moderator's not going to be able to translate it all. It's going to be multiple parts.
Yeah. And remember, we have a 2-hour cap, so we have to move it along, right? So we'll have to think about that. I would think of maybe a minute max, 30 minutes, 30 seconds to a minute suggested to ask your question. It says participants can't speak more than once in the same topic unless everyone else who wanted to be heard has already spoken. I think that's a fair rule. Statements directed to the, in this case, moderator. No person may address a question to, we say board members, that would be panel members individually. We probably would get rid of that. I think you could ask a specific panel member. I don't know. That seems reasonable. Presiding officer or the moderator in that case can prohibit public comments that are frivolous, repetitive, and harassing. We don't want our panel being harassed. That's a fair rule. Interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, abusive, off-topic, obscene, or irrelevant. Yeah, seems fair. Request any individual to leave the meeting when that person does not observe reasonable decorum or is disruptive to the conduct of the meeting. Request the assistance of law enforcement officers in the removal of disorderly person when that person's conduct interferes with the orderly progress of the meeting. Call for a recess or an adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action. I mean, we're hoping it doesn't get to any of this, right? Waive these rules with the approval of the board when necessary for the protection of privacy or the administration of the board's business. Again, that one wouldn't really come to it, I don't think. And the portion of the meeting during which the participation public is invited should be limited to 1 hour. So this is where we put our time limit in, unless extended by a vote. So most of those are pretty straightforward kind of things, and we would just tweak it for time limits and moderator instead of presiding officer and so on. Can't be abusive, can't be frivolous, can't be obscene. I mean, most of it's pretty standard decorum, right? Does anyone disagree with that or no?
No, I'm good with that.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else I'm not covering? Or that needs to be suggested or reviewed? Anybody? Okay, so calendars. I will send an email because under sunshine laws, we are allowed to discuss dates and times. So I will email you guys and we can start figuring out calendars and times and figuring out what's going to work for this. Okay? Is that okay with everyone?
Yep.
Mr. Elam? Mrs. Donahue? Mrs. Sebastian? That's okay? Okay. All right, and I will include you too as well, Mrs. Hageman and Mr. Burks. I'll include you on the emails. All right. Okay, anything further for our discussion of this Q&A session forum? No? All right. We are at hearing of the public. If we have nothing further under board items for discussion, anybody have anything we didn't think to mention before? Okay. All right. Got a stack. Got a stack, and they're in reverse order, so I'm sorry if you turned your paper in first. They're now on the bottom. I apologize. You want to put them in order? Do you want to, actually, Ms. Sebastian, will you do that? Can you put them in order of people that live? We try to get everyone who lives here first if we can. So, last paper turned in, first paper on top. Audrey Babb. Audrey Babb. Thank you. Worked out then.
Okay, I just have a personal story. My daughter almost didn't get to be part of the Colonial Williamsburg trip next year. Not because we didn't fill out the paperwork and the permission slips or write the deposit check right away, but because my daughter brought it back to school, placed it in her locker, and left it there. Only when the deadline reminder was posted did I passively mention something to my daughter. Her response, I didn't know who to give it to, and I was afraid to ask anyone. She's been a student at Bethel since kindergarten. I've never personally found any staff here to be scary, but clearly she felt awkward approaching anyone. The point of my story, this simple task, which will lead to an 8th grade trip for which she has been very excited about, left her unable to figure out who to approach for direction. There are those that want to believe if students are uncomfortable with a student of the opposite sex being present in the restroom or locker room, that they would know who to approach and be comfortable reporting any incidents. Don't fool yourselves. There are kids here that would not go to anyone.
Thank you for your comment, Mrs. Babb. Brenda Weller?
If we cannot define a person's sex/gender, can we define anything? How could we define truth, ownership, respect, driving laws, or right and from wrong in general? Why do we have education at all? As a former teacher for 30 years, I would say it is to prepare future generations to live, prosper, and be successful in accomplishing the American dream. When banks were robbed in the 1900s, there was a question that needed to be addressed. Who was at fault? Robbers were doing something against their fellow man, but was it their fault? No. It was the people who were supposed to be protecting the banks that were at fault. They did not protect. The guardians of society are supposed to guard and protect. The guardians are at fault when wrongs are allowed to take place. School boards are the guardians of our next generation. Would teaching students that gravity doesn't exist be guarding the next generation? Would teaching that it's okay to steal because the person needs it be guarding the next generation? Is allowing students to believe that they can change their sex/gender guarding this and future generations? No. So you as a school board are supporting something that does not protect this generation and future generations. Why do I say that? No one can transition from one sex gender to another because one's chromosomal structure cannot be changed. Scientifically, that is totally true, no matter how much scientific intervention is put forth. You can put on a costume and pretend to be a different sex/gender, but you cannot change your chromosomal structure. So why is this pretend thing being pushed? Do students win? What do they win? Have you asked them what they perceive will be different if they are able, which they aren't, to transition to the opposite sex? Would it make them stronger, smarter, more privileged, have more opportunities, or what? Would they be more accepted by their peers? Or would they actually be as unhappy then as now? Many who have gone that path have found that it changes nothing in the long run. The facts seem to be that the big winners are big pharma and surgeons. They're making tons of money off the hormone blockers and surgeries to remove parts or add fake pretend genitalia to the human body. Of course, now that Planned Parenthood is selling hormone blockers, they're winners in this lie too. What is the result of spaying or neutering? The individual can no longer reproduce. This is a means of population control. Will you tell a student that it's okay to spay or neuter themselves? How about this for your bathroom policy then? When a student has been spayed/neutered, then they can use any restroom they want. I love all people. I love people enough to speak truth to them for their benefit, for my benefit, and for the benefit of all people. That said, I must state that through your restroom policy, you are telling students that it is okay for them to, without opportunity to reverse this decision, sacrifice their reproductive rights for how they feel about their sex/gender right now. It is a biological reality that they cannot change back once this happens. They will not be male or female, but neuter. Why would you choose to tell students that you support neutering, spaying themselves? That choice, whether hormone blockers or surgeries, results in a person that has no sex/gender. The trans movement, part of the alphabet mafia and many other nonsensical movements today, mean to cause confusion and chaos. I refuse to believe that we need to destroy all norms of our society so that a small minority of people can put on costumes and pretend to be a different sex/gender, and we all have to believe they are. That is not truth. Why are all these non-cultural movements being pushed? So that confusion and chaos can reign, and then a tyrant can come in and control the whole country. Then there will be no freedoms for anyone. Obey the tyrant or die. Please don't encourage confusion and chaos. Tell students the truth. Stand up for them by protecting them from this horrible choice. As the school board guardians of this district, protect them from this reproductive abuse. Get them the help they need to sort this out before they decide they identify as furries.
Thank you, Ms. Weller. Jamie Spangler?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. I wanted to touch on a couple of points regarding our children here at Bethel. I have 2 kids that attend this school and are directly affected by the decisions the school board has made. I want to talk about the town hall. We want in-person town hall meetings in May for us, the parents in the community, to ask our questions. We don't want to have planned questions. Allow us to ask questions about policies that you made that affect our children. And I want to remind you, this is our community and our kids. The restroom use. The decision you unilaterally made to allow children to use the bathroom with the sex that they identified with as opposed to the sex they were born in is a safety concern and violation of privacy for our kids. This was not based off of law, nor were the parents or community involved to collaborate and come up with alternative solutions. It's clear there is an agenda that this school board is pushing, and it is not for the safety and privacy of our kids. The first line in the Bethel Local School Board Education Code of Conduct states, "I agree to always put children's interests first." The majority of you haven't done this. When you use a public restroom in the community, you have an expectation of privacy and safety. So why have you taken away the right from our children? According to the frequently asked questions that you put out, the question states, how can I be sure my child's safety and privacy in the restroom? You answered, district staff members supervise students, including during restroom breaks. Any student who has the need or desire for increased privacy, regardless of the underlying reason, may request access to a private restroom. In one of the school board meetings, you admitted that the district does not have enough staff to monitor the restrooms. So you aren't ensuring the safety and privacy of our children. You stated any child can request access to a private bathroom for any reason. My question is, why should they have to ask? Why aren't they already afforded that privacy and safety? I want to talk about leadership for a moment. I've been a leader in many organizations for over 25 years and been very successful in these roles. There are many things this leadership lacks. I'm going to focus on the 3: transparency, unity, and integrity. Transparency. You do things in secret, in the dark, and away from the parents and community, which is dishonest, cowardly, and dangerous. Unity. Instead of bringing the community together on such a difficult topic, you have divided them by choosing a side. When you choose a side, when you should be choosing the side of the students, you choose a side of a leftist agenda. This agenda does nothing to benefit any child. Integrity. Doing the right thing when no one is looking. In the military, when there's a lack of confidence in a leader's ability to lead, they are removed from that position. We have asked 3 of the school board members to resign your positions since you have chosen a leftist ideology and woke agenda as opposed to the safety and privacy of our children. My final remark to the board. We demand you do what you were placed in this job to do, which is educate our children, not indoctrinate them to a woke agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spangler. Cassandra Swinehart?
There's been lots of discussion regarding this community forum, including tonight. I don't want to just hear from attorneys. I want to hear from the board. I want you guys to respond to our questions. I'm tired of hearing us, community, coming up here saying the same things over and over, and I know you guys are too. So please acknowledge these concerns and respond to us. We're not giving up. You have communicated that this is law and that you have no choice as though this is fact and it cannot be disputed. If this was fact in black and white, we wouldn't still be having a one-sided conversation. If this is an undisputed fact, your attorneys, your state board representatives, other schools, experts would all be saying the same thing if it was fact. However, these experts are not willing to do that. The only fact is this is a very complex issue. Science and law continues to evolve and be redefined. So how can you as the board sit up there and not at least acknowledge the complexity of these issues and the gray areas and concerns of our community? How are you monitoring this new restroom policy, or stance, as you call it? One question you have failed to answer. I understand and can appreciate that the transgender students must request access to the restroom of their preference and meet specific requirements. To be clear, I'm not concerned about these few students causing harm to our students. However, it is unclear how you're monitoring this policy. There are more than 80 staff members that are on campus, teachers and substitutes, etc. How do these staff members know which students have been granted permission? Are names and pictures of these students being passed around to each of the staff, the substitutes, so they know who's allowed to be in that restroom? My guess is that's not going to happen, given the privacy of these students, which they should be given. So tell me, how are you going to know when a boy walks into a girl's restroom that that student has been granted permission? Based on the FAQ document, the transgender student is not required to dress like the sex they identify with. So it is a simple and reasonable question: how will the staff know that that boy should be in the girls' restroom? If a female student is in the girls' restroom and a boy walks in, how will this girl know that that boy is allowed to be there and he's been granted permission? How will the girl know it's okay or she's in danger? By allowing this, my fear is that you are grooming our children and telling them not to fear a boy in the girls' restroom. You are telling the girls not to question it. If he is there, it's because he's a girl and he's allowed to be there. I agree, transgender kids are not the problem, but we are grooming our students to not question a natural instinct to protect themselves, desensitizing our children to not be aware if danger is near. This is not just a problem while the kids attend Bethel. This will forever change our kids and how they interpret social cues in athletics, in college, church, in the workspace. I asked this question at the February board meeting, again in several emails to the superintendent and board members, and I don't have an answer. I didn't know about the online place to do that, but nonetheless, I have emailed this question. I've asked this question here in this meeting. The question is simple. However, I do understand the answer is very complicated, but we as a community deserve an answer to this question. How are you going to protect our children? How are you monitoring this policy? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swinehart. Brahman Crowley.
Thank you for your time tonight. During the March work session, while discussing whether to hold the community forum online or in person, it was stated by one member of the BOE that we should just proceed and have it online and get the community the answers that they're looking for. I asked that night, and I ask now, what's the holdup? I personally have been asking for answers since January 11th. I've sent emails, I've made phone calls, I've spoken up at meetings. If you truly want to answer your community, then just do it, period. In my hand are copies of emails I've sent to 1, 2, 3, 4, or all of you. I could count on this hand how many responses I've received. So if you want to answer us, just answer us, as Cassandra said. The reason we are where we are today is because of your failure to be honest and upfront with your community. Let's talk about the community forum. Since you fixed the audio, and I thank you sincerely for that, I'm thankful that the community forum will be held in person. We, the community, want this forum. I feel that it should be limited to residents only. We want you to answer us face to face. Your community deserves and in fact demands that. The board should be there. You should be answering our questions. You've put this policy in place. You've said that you're standing behind it, so stand behind it at the community forum. We don't want pre-rehearsed answers or pat responses. We do not want legalese or your borrowed FAQ information. We want to be able to look into your eyes and read your body language while you explain why you made the decision that you did. We already heard from your attorney, but we have heard from other attorneys as well. They have vastly different opinions on the subject. If it was cut and dry, we wouldn't be here now. We want a true hearing of the community. Again, we want answers.
In the January 10th board meeting, it was stated that the transgender bathroom and locker room policy was being adopted because of a possible potential threat of litigation. Was the school sued, or was there just a threat of a lawsuit? It's been said by past and current board members that late last year there was an active threat of a lawsuit by a parent in the district. That same parent stated on social media earlier this year that they knew their child's rights and that once they said they would file a complaint, they finally got them to have a meeting to address the situation. This is not hearsay. This comes directly from a comment that parent made on social media. Now, this same parent is saying that, quote, the rumor that the family threatened litigation is a flat-out lie and is only being used to create further anger. So which is it? Was the school sued or not? Was there a threat made or not? And if not, why did you rush through a policy change in January? It's been said before, and I will say it again tonight. You underestimated your community. You underestimated our knowledge. You underestimated our stamina. You underestimated our outrage. And you underestimated our determination to fight back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Crowley. Mandy Seyfried.
Hi. I would like to first speak on the lack of trust our community now has for the board and admin of this school district. This school is the heart of the community. We do not have big businesses. We do not have large corporations bringing people into Bethel for jobs. People come to Bethel for the school. Once you lose the school, you lose this community. Our community will not stand by and watch as we become the next Loudoun County. You have put every student at risk in this school by not having safety measures discussed and put in place before caving to idle threats or complaints, or whatever it is we're calling it today. When I asked about the safety measures back in January, I was told they were being looked into. When I emailed you all at the beginning of this month, I was told they were still being looked into. But a records request that was done in the same week I sent that email proved there was no communication sent about the bathroom safety measures. It's nice to hear that this process has finally been started. However, the FAQ came out in early February. We're now in mid-April. What was the delay? The only thing I can assume at this point is the words copied and pasted from Troy's FAQ on safety precautions were never intended to be followed through with, without the constant questions from parents. Our superintendent could have easily changed the section on student safety to incorporate what you all actually planned on doing, but instead the wording was left exactly the same as what was found in Troy's FAQ. Even worse than that is the board members who voted to send out the FAQ didn't bother to look into it themselves. Did you even care how much was copied over, or what parts were or weren't copied from Troy's? Had you bothered to look at it before I even sent you the email earlier this month? My thoughts on the Q&A session are that you have continuously ignored parents' questions since January. We don't trust you, and we don't believe our questions will be answered in any online forum. It has been called a community town hall Q&A up until today, and there is a difference. My next question would be, do the questions you are asking people to submit online get saved somewhere? How will we know the questions are going to who they should be if we don't get a response? Moving back to the safety issue at hand, your only option at this point is to reverse your newly misinterpretation of our Title IX policy. You have done nothing besides open the door to greater risks of sexual assault, harassment, and bullying in the restrooms, especially against the transgender students. As a parent, I am appalled that you would put a child in a situation that increases the risk to their mental and physical safety. You mentioned before having the resource officer check restrooms, but putting the safety of 1,700 to 1,800 students on the shoulders of one resource officer is negligent. Then you inform parents, teachers are monitoring the restrooms, which is laughable. To assume teachers can now be bathroom monitors on top of their already demanding positions is careless and quite frankly insulting to them. The teachers are already balancing the demands of state regulations, test scores, grading, differentiation, inclusion, accommodations, classroom discipline, being emotionally supportive, contacting parents, keeping students engaged and on task, giving up planned periods to help out because you have mentioned in multiple meetings being understaffed. Staying late or giving up more time to help struggling students, and actually teaching the class and making it fun. But you're right, let's add bathroom monitors to that list. You have all moved forward with this and refused to listen to our community concerns. We are not saying to ignore the student who is feeling like they don't fit in, but by making the decision, you have made it unsafe and unacceptable. We are asking one final time for Lori Sebastian, Lyda Mansfield, and Danny Elam to resign from your positions on this board. In my hands are signatures received from this community to have you removed. Yes, all of those are signature pages. We already have more signatures to remove one of you from the board than you actually received to be voted onto the board. You all claim you want to save this school from litigation, then step down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Seyfried. Irvin Heichman. Is it Heichman? Did I have that right?
My name is Caleb Crocht, but I'll be reading these comments on Irv's behalf. These are his words.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Irvin Heichman. I'm not able to be present in person this evening, but I wanted to share a few thoughts after attending the last 2 Bethel School Board meetings. My thanks to Caleb for reading my comments. I'm speaking as a long-term resident of Bethel Township. I've observed in these meetings that our superintendent and our school board members carry heavy workloads, and I have a new appreciation for the service they offer our community and school. Leadership can be lonely and stressful, especially in the midst of conflict. So I want to begin by saying thank you to them. I regret that the conversation about transgender youth has led to such an emotional and polarized debate. It's all too easy in the heat of emotion to forget the importance of showing respect in conversation and to keep debate civil toward the goal of finding solutions for the common good. We are better people if we do not demonize our opponents, and better off if we do not reduce our options to false choices. In this case, we do not need to pit one group of students against another as if we can't provide safe space for all kids. Fear is a powerful emotion which can keep us in fight or flight mode. When in that mode, we can't do our best collaboration toward the common good. I watched a documentary recently which reviewed how Hollywood movies have stoked fear of people who are transgender for profit. Sadly, in movies and television since the 1950s, this messaging about people who are transgender has been consistently negative. First, movies exploited and reinforced a sense of disgust. Another theme in movies or television has been to portray men pretending to be women for comedy, or to write a transgender woman as the murderer in horror films or murder mysteries. The entertainment industry over the decades has made money portraying false stereotypes and the fears they invoke. Sadly, a more honest portrayal of transgender people in movies and television, simply as people who are neighbors and friends, is rare. Several years ago, I attended a Christian conference in which we were placed in small groups for Bible study and conversation. My group was led by a lovely woman who came from a Pentecostal Christian background. She embodied the best of that spiritual tradition. She exuded a warmth and spirituality that put our group at ease. I only learned later that this compelling spiritual leader was a transgender woman. When she shared her story, I was deeply moved by how difficult her struggle was as a youth and how she found peace with herself and God as she found the courage to live as her true and authentic self. Meeting her and others like her helped me appreciate the importance of supporting kids who are transgender. Theirs is a difficult journey in a culture in which they will face deep prejudice. So I'm supportive of the school board's policy to provide safe space for youth who are transgender in our school. But there's no reason why this policy can't be implemented in ways that help all kids feel more comfortable and safe. I'm not transgender, but I was a very shy kid growing up. After gym classes, I often didn't shower because I was uncomfortable going into a communal shower. I would have appreciated having private shower stalls like those provided these days at the YMCA and campgrounds. Let's have the school commit to providing private stalls in bathrooms and locker rooms. This solution seems relatively simple and not terribly expensive. Provide private spaces for all kids, then all children can have the privacy they deserve. I encourage the school board to work at these kinds of practical solutions that can ease fears and benefit all children and youth. This way, we will not be tempted to prioritize the comfort of the majority at the expense of a vulnerable minority. Let's do this together and show that Bethel School community can be a model of civility and creative solutions and an example of compassion for our country, but most of all for our youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Caleb. I didn't catch your last name, Caleb. I'm sorry.
Crocht. K-R-A-C-H-T.
No, you're okay. Thank you. Thank you for your comments on behalf of Mr. Fleischman. Alan Bowes.
Hello. I have attended these for the first time in the last couple months, and I have never seen a more rude people in my life. You're skirting your responsibilities, which is okay because we're going to replace you, and then we'll have that form, I guess, properly, and get rid of it. This is not a difficult subject. There's either a boy or a girl. It's that simple. To say otherwise is just a denial of science. I don't care what anybody feels. You can do what you want. And of course, I'm doing what I always do. Getting noticed because it's important, I guess, because I'm going to insult everybody. But anyways, that's how it is. You're going to lose eventually. The law, you got a bad lawyer. And as far as there's no unbiased people. You're just trying to get rid of having that. You don't want to face the community. That's why you want us to submit on the internet, because you can just toss it aside, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. But anyways, everybody talks about rights. I don't see them having any special rights itemized. I mean, I know every government building I go into, my Second Amendment is thrown away. What about that right? But let's all just get down to reasonableness. You got 5 girls in a female restroom and 1 transgender goes in there. Is it reasonable for 5 females to be uncomfortable with the guy in the bathroom versus that boy going to the boys' room and he's the only one uncomfortable? That's what's reasonable. Use the restroom of your plumbing. It's that simple. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bowes. Rachel Kiplinger.
For the past 107 days, the board has put the feelings of one student over the privacy and safety of all others, and there is no end in sight. It has been 63 days since the board suggested a town hall meeting. Nothing has been confirmed for a town hall because the board not only wants to control the narrative of the town hall by having all questions submitted beforehand, now they can't even figure out who they want to invite. What are you afraid of? And who is the moderator that you have in mind? The members of this board were elected to represent the members of the community, not just those that threaten to sue. It is time that the board puts the safety and well-being of all students first by reversing the stance on the restroom policy and bringing the privacy and safety back to Bethel. I understand this is a sensitive topic, but it is one being addressed and debated throughout the country. Title IX was supposed to offer women equal access to education and sports opportunities and not be used as a vessel for boys and men to gain access to the women's bathroom and locker rooms, nor to allow boys and men to compete in women's sports. Feelings are not facts, and the facts are that the biological men do not belong in a biological woman's restroom, locker room, or on their sports teams, and vice versa. This community knows you are stalling, and I am calling you out on it. The 3 members of this board that have allowed this stance to be integrated into our school need to go. You were elected to speak for the members of this community and have allowed fear of litigation to guide your decisions. The students, parents, and community members deserve better than what you are providing now. I know you're hoping that all the publicity around this restroom issue will go away and you can go back to doing things the way you want, but you have poked the bear. The members of this community are paying attention,
and we expect you to keep your word. So why won't you even entertain that this stance is wrong and detrimental to the majority of the students? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kipler. Oh my God, why does this thing keep doing this? I apologize, everybody. For some reason, my timer keeps kicking in instead of the stopwatch. Nels Christopher Swanson.
I'm Chris Swanson, a 1968 graduate of Bethel School. There's some information in my remarks which I will not read, but you may find as a forwarded message in your email. It's from swanson1776@gmail.com, and it's sent to the board members, and it excludes, I didn't send it to the treasurer or the superintendent. And as I go on here, in a moment, you'll understand why I'm not going to read everything that I printed on that email. My topics are twofold: the microphone/audio quality on school board's website, and the Ohio High School Athletic Association guidelines for transgender participation. During the board's March 14th, 2022 meeting, I spoke concerning the low sound volume available with the video transmissions. And judging by the applause I received, the members of the public are equally frustrated. I've sent an email to Board President Mansfield requesting that she investigate the quality of the audio portion of recent board meetings available on the Bethel K12.oh.us website, and if possible, obtain the requisite technological expertise to rectify the poor audio quality. Perhaps you have tried, but just don't know how to investigate and/or resolve this situation. Here is a partial list of personnel currently employed by Bethel local schools who might be of assistance. There's first a technology/business teacher. Second, there's a media center specialist, middle school and high school. Third, there's a technology director/information technology. Fourth, there's a technology support specialist. And if you recall, when the high school principal spoke, he said at 7:45 that there's going to be a new position, or he's requesting for a new position, which is a another tech person. And if you look at that email that I forwarded to you, you'll find contact information with the name of each of those positions that I talked about, their phone number, and their email address. The second item is the Ohio High School Athletic Association guidelines for transgender participation. The Ohio High School Athletic Association, Doug Ute, that's spelled U-T-E, the executive director, will be voting May 1 through May 15th, 2022 on guidelines for transgender participation, which is a referendum which, if passed, will allow transgenders to compete in girls' sports. If a high school does not accept this policy, they will lose membership in the OHSAA and basically keep their student athletes from competing. If you support the integrity of girls and women's sports, you should call your high school principal and athletic director and tell them to vote not to allow males to participate in female sports. This referendum can be defeated if a majority of the 800-member schools' principals vote it down. And then in the email, you'll find the names of these two individuals at Bethel, their phone numbers, and their email addresses. Did I get any of those? Did I run out of time?
Just now.
Thank you.
Yep, perfect timing, Mr. Swanson. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Swanson. Lastly, we have Roberta, is it Ullinger?
Madam President and members of the board, my name is Bobby Ullinger. My pronouns are her, she. For the third time in as many months, I have traveled 3 hours from Kent to stand up for, or rather stand with, some of your most vulnerable students in your district, transgender kids. But transgender kids are also some of the most courageous and resilient people that I know. I know young kids, 10 and 11 years old, who have been fighting for their rights for most of their lives, standing up to bullies, many bullies who are adults that would take away not only their civil rights, but their very right to live. Just like 6-year-old Ruby Bridges stood up to adult bullies who would deny her an equal education, trans kids today are standing up against adult bullies that would deny their very existence. And just like in the 1950s and 60s, where the struggle was not about water fountains, today's struggle is not about toilets. It's about power. It's about false prophets disguising a message of hate and moral imperatives. It's about false prophets disguising a message of hate as moral imperatives and safety concerns, hoping to increase their influence over elected officials. It's about a very loud and vocal minority that are trying to expand their power base by exploiting the most vulnerable. Quote, "My death needs to mean something. My death needs to be counted in the number of transgender people who commit suicide this year. I want someone to look at that number and say, it's effed up, and fix it. Fix society, please." These are some of the final words of Leila Alcorn, a 17-year-old transgender student just before she stepped in front of a semi on I-71, just 50 miles south of here. I beg you to listen to her words, to her plea. My death needs to mean something. Fix society, please. 2 months ago, I attended this meeting. I stood in the back of this room with a group of gay, trans, and queer kids who go to this very school. And as adults called them terrible things like perverts and demonic, I looked at their faces. I saw the anguish. These kids are bright, they're here and they're listening, and the words that they are hearing are having an effect. They're taking a toll. These are kids that when you took office, you took responsibility for. You are responsible not only for building a new school and buying textbooks, but you are responsible for their well-being. And I know that you take that responsibility very seriously. I have also heard at these meetings references to and quotes from the Bible, and I'm sure that we will hear many more. But when you hear these quotes, I hope that you will also consider the words of Jesus as told to us in Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 20. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is to be cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. And within this passage in mind, ask yourselves, will the way that many of these people here would have you understand Scripture bear good fruit or bad fruit? When you look into the faces of these kids, is the anguish that you see...
That's it. That's time.
Okay. Please just protect the trans kids.
Thank you for your time. These were the ones for agenda. Okay, and that is the conclusion of hearing of the public. I leave it to the board. She said she arrived late and to get in time to turn in her slip, which are supposed to be turned at the beginning of the meeting. I mean, we've never turned it down before. Thank you for your honesty. That's fine. Can I
My
have your
name
slip?
is,
May I have your
yes.
slip? Do have to have the slip. So, Virginia, is it Nepper?
It's Keeper.
Keeper. It's
Yes,
a U. Yes?
it's a U,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
So, yes, my name's Virginia Keeper. I live on Scarf Road. I am a tax-paying member of Bethel Township. So I am not going to restate anything that has already been stated eloquently here by many people, but I did just want to go on the record and say to this panel, especially after listening to the beginning of the community / Q&A forum discussion, I just want to know why you are so afraid to have an honest discussion on the topic of the transgender bathrooms. I want to know why these rules in such fine print, I have to take my glasses off to read them, are so controlling. It really stifles free speech. It stifles the freedom to come up here and be honest. Good thinking people are cowed by the prospect, and they defer to other people who are a little bolder and maybe who write better or speak better. It shuts down free speech. You have created an intimidating, and I would even say hostile environment here on this topic. And it is really very, very sad. I really implore you, because you are elected to do this, your job is to figure out a way to create a community forum where both sides of this issue are fairly discussed, debated, maybe even, angrily presented by some people who are very passionate about it. I am certain that you will not find an unbiased attorney. I am pretty sure there is no such thing. So this place is supposed to be about the community. And since I have been coming to these meetings since February, I am staggered by the way we are very not well represented here. And I just really implore you to do your jobs and make that community forum something that gets to the bottom of this issue and comes up with a resolution that is acceptable, that is fair, that is honest, and that treats all the students at this school with dignity and respect. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Keeper. Okay, and now I believe we're at the end of hearing of the public. Executive session, I know we're going to need an executive session for item 1 to consider employment and possible compensation for an employee. Is there any other need for executive session from any of the members, or Mr. Ferks or Mrs. Hageman? No? Okay, is there a motion for executive session? Ms. Sebastian moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Was that Mrs. Franz? Or Mrs. Franz? Okay, Mrs. Hageman, we have a moment. Will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian? Yes. Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Okay, motion for executive session carries 5-0. We're going to executive sessions at 9:37. And is there any action expected by anyone after executive session? No, no action taken after executive session. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much for your time and your comments this evening. You're appreciated.